A soldier, trained to defend, willing to sacrifice and sworn to protect. He risks his life daily for his country and its people, with a singular purpose: to shield others, even at the cost of his own life. But what if that same soldier, once a symbol of security, became a source of terror? A man who never valued his own survival, only the safety of others. What if he turned into a ruthless serial killer? Imagine the horror of knowing that someone trained to eliminate threats had become the very thing people feared most. Tonight, I bring you the chilling case of such a man, a soldier whose deadly transformation shocked the world. This is the story of Robert Lee Yates, infamously known as the Grocery Killer. Before starting the video, if you love your mother, type "I love you, mother" in the comments. If you don't comment, it means you don't love your mother. Robert Lee Yates was born on May 27, 1952, in Spokane, Washington. Raised in a middle-class, deeply religious household, his early life seemed unremarkable, at least on the surface. But beneath the facade of normalcy, a darkness was brewing. Yates was an introverted child, withdrawn and quiet. He lacked social connections, had few friends, and showed little interest in school or sports. But there was one thing that captivated him: warfare and weaponry. As a teenager, his obsession with guns and hunting grew. He spent hours in isolation, honing his shooting skills instead of attending class. Skipping school became routine, but not for the usual teenage rebellion. He was drawn to the thrill of the hunt, the precision of a bullet, and the control that came with pulling the trigger. This fixation would shape his future in ways no one could have predicted. After high school, Yates enrolled in college, but his academic performance remained unremarkable. His mind wasn't on books or grades. His true passion lay elsewhere, in something far more ominous. Robert Lee Yates made a life-altering decision. He joined the U.S. Army. The rigid discipline and structure of military life provided him with a sense of purpose, a clear direction, and he thrived. In the Army, Yates trained as a helicopter pilot, successfully completing numerous missions across the globe, including deployments in Germany and South Korea. Though he had never been an outstanding student, one skill had always set him apart: his talent for shooting. His precision with a firearm earned him immense respect among his peers, solidifying his reputation as a disciplined and highly capable soldier. During his military career, Robert married a nurse, Linda Brewer, and together they built what seemed like the picture-perfect life. They had 5 children, lived in a quiet neighborhood, and by all appearances, Robert was a devoted husband, a loving father, and a respected serviceman. He was the kind of man neighbors greeted warmly, the kind of father who played with his kids, the kind of husband who provided for his family. But beneath the mask of normalcy lurked a sinister truth. Robert wasn't just a soldier, a husband, or a father. He was something far darker, a man consumed by violent urges, a mind twisted by an insatiable hunger for bloodshed. His military deployments exposed him to the brutal realities of war, death, violence, destruction, and instead of being haunted by what he saw, he was thrilled by it. Something inside him shifted, twisted into something unrecognizable. Then, in 1975, the darkness finally took control. His first known victims, Susan Savage and Patrick Oliver, were an unsuspecting young couple in Walla Walla, Washington. They had no idea that they were being watched, no clue that they had crossed paths with a man whose mind had already made a deadly decision. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Robert Lee Yates was ready to kill. Susan and Patrick were living their lives peacefully, unaware that one day Robert would enter their world. Robert approached them without any reason, without any warning. He simply pulled out his gun and shot them both on the spot. They died instantly. When the police arrived, they were baffled. There was no apparent motive, no robbery, No personal vendetta, nothing. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't find a suspect or a logical reason for the murders. With no leads and no evidence, the case eventually went cold. Then came the 1990s, and Robert had grown even more ruthless. This time, he started targeting women, specifically those who had no one to look after them. He focused on sex workers, knowing that if they disappeared, no one would ask too many questions. These were women society often overlooked. If they went missing, people assumed they had simply moved on. If they were killed, there was no one to report them missing, no one to mourn them. They were the perfect prey for Robert. Robert's method was chillingly systematic. He would drive to areas known for prostitution, pick up a victim, lure her into his vehicle, and take her to an isolated location. There, he would assault her and then kill her, usually by shooting her with his .25 caliber pistol. Between 1990 and 1998, Robert murdered at least 11 women in Washington, all following the same horrifying pattern. Heather Hernandez, August 1997. Robert picked up Heather from Spokane's red light district, drove her to a secluded spot, and forced himself on her. Then, without hesitation, he shot her in the head with his .25 caliber pistol. Her body was later dumped on the outskirts of Spokane. Jennifer Joseph, July 1997. Jennifer, just 16 years old, became Robert's second victim. He offered her a ride, then assaulted and killed her. Her body was later found in a desolate field, a place where almost no one ever went. Darla Scott, November 1997. Darla was Robert's third victim. Unlike the previous murders, he waited a long time before killing again, perhaps to avoid suspicion. But when he struck again, his method remained the same. Darla was picked up from a red light district, given a ride, taken to an isolated location, assaulted, and then shot multiple times. Her lifeless body was found near a river in Spokane. Melinda Mercer, December 1997. Robert took Melinda Mercer to a deserted road, where he brutally murdered her. By the time her body was discovered, it was in a horrific state, completely decomposed. Sean McLennan and Laurel Wasson, December 1997. On a single night, Robert targeted 2 different women. He took them to separate locations, murdered them, and then disposed of their bodies deep in the forest. One by one, Robert had now killed 11 people, following the same terrifying pattern. But despite his calculated approach, he made one fatal mistake. He kidnapped a young woman named Kristen Smith. The plan was the same: lure, isolate, and kill. But this time, Kristen managed to escape. She ran for her life, and that one mistake would be the beginning of Robert's downfall. From the very beginning, Robert made sure to keep long gaps between his murders. This way, no one would suspect a serial killer was behind them. But as victims started piling up, all following the same pattern, the police grew suspicious. It became clear a dangerous serial killer was on the loose, preying on women in the city. A task force was formed to hunt him down. By the year 2000, advances in DNA evidence and ballistics helped establish a clear pattern. Then, investigators received a crucial tip. A white van had been spotted near multiple crime scenes. But the biggest breakthrough came when a victim came forward and exposed Robert's identity. And that victim was Kristen Smith, the one who had escaped. Kristen went to the police and described everything: what Robert looked like, his height, weight, clothing style, his white van, his key weapon. With every detail falling into place, the police had their suspect. In April 2000, officers raided Robert's home in Spokane and arrested him. When they searched his white van, they found traces of blood that was a direct match to one of the victims. And when DNA testing was completed, it linked Robert to multiple murders. At first, like every other criminal, Robert denied everything. He claimed, "I didn't do it. I'm a soldier. I would never do such things." But as the evidence stacked up, One after another, Robert had no way out. Finally, he confessed. He admitted to 13 murders, but investigators suspected the real number was much higher. After his confession, it was time for trial. Robert's case became high profile, with the media and the public watching closely. The trial dragged on for 2 years, and finally, in 2002, the verdict was delivered. Robert was found guilty. He was sentenced to death penalty, and in a separate Washington case, he received life imprisonment. And just like that, the reign of terror Robert Yates had unleashed came to an end.